Welcome to Everything Co-op, bringing you information on how cooperatives can help improve your quality of life. This show is being sponsored by the National Co-op Bank, NCB. The NCB is dedicated to strengthening communities nationwide for the delivery of banking and financial services for the nation's cooperatives, their members, and other socially responsible organizations. For more information on the power of community ownership, visit ncb.coop. That's ncb.coop. Now stay tuned for your host, Vernon Oakes.
Good morning, everybody. This is Vernon Oakes. Welcome to Everything Co-op. This is a great, beautiful Thursday morning with a lot in the news. But there's something going on in Epps, Alabama, and Birmingham this weekend I wanted to tell you about. The Federation of Southern Co-ops is celebrating their 50th anniversary. They got started in 1967 during the civil rights era. The cooperators came together and formed an umbrella organization, the Federation of Southern Co-ops. And so we congratulate Cornelius Blanding and Ralph Page and everybody down in Birmingham and Epps, Alabama that's coming together this weekend. Sorry we're not going to be there with you, but please enjoy yourself and have a great time. And talking about having a great time, we're going to have a great time this morning talking to Mr. Stephen Shaff, who's the founder of Community Vision Partners here in the metropolitan area. Good morning, Stephen.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming into the studio and talking to us.
My pleasure.
And I understand you all have put together 400 affordable home ownership opportunities in this area. Mm-hmm. How did it happen?
Well, my background is, my social background is as a community activist and political organizer, but my social enterprise background is affordable housing development. So my focus and expertise was working in the underserved communities, mostly in Ward 7 and 8 in D.C., and the emphasis was on helping create home ownerships in neighborhoods that were obviously in the path of gentrification. So our goal was to help convert the housing stock from basically, for lack of a better term, slum apartments into decent quality, green, affordable housing that was accessible to many of our members in the community that could not afford home ownership.
But how do you start doing that, Steve?
A lot of hard work, a lot of experience, a lot of mistakes, but the real, I think, ability for us to get it done was to stick to our social agenda. We used business in a way that could be profitable, but also at the same time really built a different way of doing business that could be much better for the common good. So we used creative ways to finance properties, to keep our costs low, build relationships with a lot of nonprofit organizations out there that were involved with housing. We created the coalitions and the partnerships to help steer people to opportunities that they did not normally come across. A lot of hard work, a lot of experience, a lot of mistakes, but the real, I think, ability for us to get it done was to stick to our social agenda. We used business in a way that could be profitable, but also at the same time really built a different way of doing business that could be much better for the common good. So we used creative ways to finance properties, to keep our costs low, build relationships with a lot of nonprofit organizations out there that were involved with housing. We created the coalitions and the partnerships to help steer people to opportunities that they did not normally come across.
I know I've been a part of creating 100 affordable housing. Well, it was more like 67, but there were 7 nonprofits that did it. And throughout, but mostly was in Northwest from 95 to 2005. And it's hard work. You did 400.
Absolutely. When you're in the real estate business and you mentioned you do affordable housing, a lot of the folks that have capital and ability to help the situation sort of glaze over, and it's just not something that attracts a lot of attention sometimes until you start showing them that if you do it well, you can earn some pretty good returns. So we had that resistance that wasn't sexy enough, or why do this when we should be in the upper Northwest or converting the gem housing. But I think they really influenced and exerted the issue of affordable housing into the city government in a way that really really got everyone to sort of work together to the point where we now have a nice housing fund and so on, et cetera. So, again, MANA is an absolutely terrific organization.
Well, you're talking about Roseanne Look at MANA, who's done a lot of work to with Bob Poland, you mentioned CHND, to bring about this whole idea of, as we're getting gentrified and houses are going up from, I know in 1998, in this development I was telling you about, we sold some homes for $300,000, totally renovated, basement all the way up. And by the time we finished them, they were going for $900,000. Same kind of home in 2005. So 95 when we got started, sold the first group in 98, 99. The last group we sold in 2005, they'd gone up that much.
It was a frenzy.
Yeah.
And actually, I guess it's a frenzy again today. So the question is, how do you preserve housing for folks that need to live, work, and contribute to the local economy? And I think, other alternatives, shared equity, things like that. But co-ops, as you indicated, and you certainly have tremendous expertise in, this is a very big tool that may not be as common in the housing market as it should be, but for changing communities, co-ops is a tool. If you do it right and you do it on a scale, that could really allow, that gentrification is going to come no matter what. I mean, from 300,000 to 900,000, that's market forces, and as you know, it's tough to really beat back, shall we say, the enthusiasm for profit of the market. So how do you still keep, community members in their own communities? Co-ops, I think, are an excellent tool if you know how to do them well.
Well, it's an excellent tool, and if you look at all of the numbers, all of the variables, anything you can look at, they outperform apartments all across the board. And I haven't seen any research where they look at co-ops compared to condos, but I would think that they would outperform that from the standpoint of having community and people living in community. Because one of the things that co-ops can do is that condos can't do. Co-ops have a membership committee that will look at each person that wants to buy or rent or move into the co-op, and they can say, yes, you can come in, thumbs up, or thumbs down, no, you cannot come in. And condos can't have that. Have to do it by the law. Fair housing laws have to be in place and so forth. In New York, a condominium did not let Madonna come in. Another one did not let Nixon come in. And they both said, and it was upheld in court, that they would disrupt my quiet enjoyment of my home with the camera people. Paparazzi, yeah. There you go. So if you look at HUD comparative apartment buildings compared to co-ops, their rents were lower, they were better kept, people felt more at home, they took care of each other. Then they had less foreclosures, a lot less. That the HUD insurance for co-ops had gone up. They just haven't had to use it. Where apartment buildings, they put people out and so forth. The quality of the housing stock is much better because people that live there, once they understand they're owners, and that's a transition in attitude from a tenant to an owner. But once they understand they're owners, they take better care of their facilities. And then the board would change the roof when the roof needs a change. Where because of the profit-making motive, an apartment building owner may not change those roofs or those windows or those other capital improvements that have to be done. Right. So yeah, co-ops outperform.
Yeah, that's a good point about in terms of home ownership and pride of community and sense of community and all that sort of thing. When I first started out, I was not a businessman. I didn't know D.C. I came from the Philadelphia area. So when I came here, I had no idea of the area. I had no idea I was even going to get into real estate business, but that's another story for another day. I learned the city in a very unusual way. I had a motorcycle when I first came down here. I was in my 20s, so, of course, you didn't worry about, the realities of having a motorcycle.
I rode my motorcycle here today, okay? And I'm not in my 20s.
Give me a ride home, would you? Love to be back on a motorcycle. But anyway, the point is, I would drive through alleyways to get to know neighborhoods, and I began to realize, I started figuring out which alleys were blocks full of homeowners versus renters. It was a huge difference. Homeowners, they kept their alleys clean. They made sure the city services were taken care of. There was a clear distinction of what an alley of homeowners were compared to a block or two away, where it was just complete, all sorts of crazy stuff and everything else going on. And it really came down to, if you don't own or have a piece or responsibility for something, you are not going to take care of it. So again, in these communities, the more we can increase home ownership, and again, cooperation, co-ops are a good way to do it, the more you're going to have healthier communities where people literally have ownership in their community. So co-ops are, not only needed, but have a very good social positive impact in the entire neighborhoods.
Social wealth is created with co-ops and financial wealth. That's the other piece of it. Listen, we got to take our first break. Time goes by very quickly. If anybody have a comment or a question, you can call in at 1-800-450-7876. And Mr. Stephen Shaff is our visitor in the studio with us this morning. And we'll keep talking about cooperative. We'll be right back.
Washington, D.C.'s News Talk 1450 AM WO and 95.9 FM.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Vernon Oakes. Everything Cooperative is the program you're listening to. We're talking about the benefits and the values of cooperative living in housing. You can have a co-op that is owned and operated by the employees of a business, and it's called a worker cooperative. So as you can think, any co-op you can think of, any co-op, any business you can think of could be a co-op if it's owned by the employees, a worker cooperative. If it's owned and controlled by the consumers that uses the products or services of the business, it's called a consumer cooperative. And that is credit unions are a consumer cooperative. We've been talking about housing co-ops this morning. The housing cooperatives are owned by the people that live in that business. The credit unions are owned by the people that put their deposits and have their checking accounts. And then you vote for a board of directors, and that board of directors makes decisions, long-term decisions about the business. Consumer cooperatives, there's one here in D.C. called CPA. They started out with charter schools and churches providing services like solar panels and gas, trash collection. So I just named the wrong one. So let me talk about two other types. Purchasing co-op. CPA is a purchasing co-op. They buy products and services for the people, the members, and they get a better quality, normally at a lower price. And you normally have those with farmers and artists. Farmers are the ones in the U.S. government. The Department of Agriculture is to know more about co-ops than probably anybody else. HUD probably would have been second. But the farmers they create purchasing co-ops, and then they create marketing co-ops. So that leaves the farmer needing to produce whatever they produce, and they have some people that get the expertise on how to buy the products and services and sometimes the equipment that they need. And the same thing for artists. Artists are now coming together and creating co-ops that they will buy a warehouse together where they can do their crafts and they can then sell their goods at this warehouse. So they come together, and the artists now can do what they do best, and that's produce their art. And on the purchasing side of it, on the marketing side of it, you have companies like Land O'Lakes and Cabot Creamery that they will now sell the products that the different farmers produce. So those are your four basic types of co-ops. And in this program, the National Co-op Bank is sponsoring it to give you the information you may need so you can start a co-op, or you can find out who's doing what in this area. And we've had guests all the way through the U.S., all the way out to California. They talk about what's going on in your neighborhood in creating co-ops. So, Mr. Stephen Shaff, we were talking about housing and the benefits of ownership. And as I said, the research says that any variable you look at, the co-op housing outperforms the apartment buildings for a community, because they also there was a co-op in Atlanta that the research said that the people that came there made 7.1% on their money, their membership fee, or their similar. Sometimes it's just like a security deposit. Sometimes it's more. But they got 7.1% return off of their money. But that did not include that they could write off their insurance and they could write off their portion of the property taxes. It also did not include that in this same community, the co-ops rent, I put that in quotes, co-op fee, rent, whatever you call it, maintenance fee, was running about $500 a month. Where if you went down the street, the 2-bedroom for an apartment was running $700 and $800 a month. So throughout they've been in existence for 40 years, probably like 45 now. So throughout the years, their costs did not go up. They didn't have to worry about profit, as one example. And then if they maintained it better, taking care of things when they needed to be taken care of, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure or something like that old thing. They took care of it when they needed to, so their costs were down. So people had a much bigger than 7.1% return if you look at the opportunity cost and their tax, after tax. So it's amazing. I can't, it seems like that HUD would want to put all of their dollars into co-ops. There is one caveat. There's probably more than one, but the major caveat is it takes work. Okay, it takes, somebody said on this program, it's hard work. That's why there's not more co-ops.
Yeah, those that I know that have either lived or invested or been involved with co-ops, that's one of the first reactions is, oh, they're hard to work with, so on, et cetera. Well, condos, and even if you had lived in a neighborhood with single families, it all takes work. With a co-op, though, there's a commitment where everyone needs to be involved or held responsible for that work, and ultimately, long term, is not only you're getting good returns on your financial investment, but you're getting tremendous returns on the quality of life. Those that in your co-op, in your building, they're all one way or another looking out for each other. Why? Because they have a real interest. If you're living in a neighborhood and the house next door or that has crazy people in them or something's going on in your neighborhood, you sort of close your doors and leave it alone. Co-ops tend to be, it's harder to avoid that, and at the end of the day that makes for much more healthy, comfortable communities, and you can't ignore or forget that you're not just looking for a return, you're looking for a place that you can call home and you feel really good and comfortable and safe. So that's what I would call a personal return, not monetary, but a personal return about living in a situation where everyone literally cooperatively looks out for each other, even if it's just for their own interest. That's still much more of a mindset there. That even condos, where condos are a collection of individual, independent owners who don't, except for the condo responsibilities, don't necessarily have to really work hard on a community.
Well, the work hard I found is there's a tremendous payback. And the payback is, like you said, much bigger than the financial payback, and it's a social wealth. Not only the social wealth inside the community of the co-op, but the social wealth inside. Well, I live in a 57-unit co-op. It's a market rate co-op on East Capitol and Benny Road. Okay. Right now it's a gated community. The board decided to put a gate up about 10 years ago to stop people from shopping in our parking lot. They would take cars. They would buy them without even a deposit. Okay. So we watch out for each other. It's absolutely amazing. But not only is it good for the community inside there, but it's also good for that community in Ward 7 that would actively participate. It's also good for the community of Washington, D.C. and the United States of America. So there's impact that a cooperative community will have on itself and throughout. And that's its social benefit. You learn how to work with police. You learn how to work with aging or young people. So it really, really works. I get excited about it, talking about it, and I'm so glad that, you've done 400 affordable units. And that's something I would like to do, is a sort of help get more units and more people to understand co-ops.
Well, in terms of I think one of the most pressing needs about housing, and a lot of things on the social side of things, we need to create scale. So the Manas out there, they do great work, and they make a real impact, but I would love to see them one day do 10 times as much as they're doing now. They probably still won't be able to solve the affordable housing issue or house people in quality housing. So the real issue is these models work. You can build a sense of community. You could bring other things into these co-ops like arts and other things that help support the community. The question is, how can we do it? Because for whatever reason, for the last several generations, we can't seem to get this together, even though we've got resources, wealth, and everything else, and theoretically the government beyond us. How do we really build this out? So part of what Communities and Partners is doing is not only working on the social enterprise side, but we're trying to really help build up the creative economy side, the sharing economy side, the cooperative economy side, which is growing. It's a huge growth because our economy has changed. The work jobs aren't as available. Quality housing and all that aren't as available as they used to be in maybe our parents' generation or even some of our older listeners' generation. So the question is, how do we really expand on solutions? And the fact of the matter is, there are solutions. We already have them. They've been around for a while. So how do you go and you create more, not just 400 or so, and I've been involved with and advised a lot more than that, but we need thousands, many more thousands, which then creates all sorts of other benefits to the economy, to the quality of life, lower crime, a greater sense of responsibility to the community, and so on, et cetera. So it's a tough thing to do, and part of what we do at Communities and Partners is not that bricks and mortar, but how do we bring all these sectors together to really change communities, particularly those that are on the path of gentrification. I love Anacostia. I've lived and worked down there. I've got a lot of experience there, but it doesn't look this way right now, but Anacostia is going to be absolutely transformed in the next 10 years. Look at H Street. Look at 14th and U. Right? How do you create change without blowing everyone out of the water? It can be done, but it's a tough thing to do because you need to bring all these parties and sectors together. But it's got to be done.
Well, I totally agree with you, having managed a lot of properties in Southeast. But we're going to take our second break, and we're going to come back and talk about gentrification and the kind of things we can do that keeps people there, where they don't have to be pushed out to Ward 9, Prince George's County. We'll be right back. Please don't touch that dial.
Washington, D.C.'s News Talk, 1450 AM WOL and 95.9 FM.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Vernon Oakes. Everything Cooperative is the program you're listening to. We're talking about the benefits and the values of cooperative living in housing.
Everyone who doesn't know about Mount Rainier, or back in the 80s and 90s, the only thing you knew about Mount Rainier, aside from all the liquor stores there, which fortunately we've changed that situation, everyone knew Glut. Glut is a food co-op that's been there now for well over 50 years. And almost the entire, community and arts community and the open-minded folks moved to Mount Rainier because Glut was there. And Glut is 100% co-op, 100% consensus, and everyone that works there literally owns it. And the spirit that is Glut and the products and what they've done to serve the community has been so tremendous that it really literally helped change the entire face of the community. It's a very multicultural community. It's a very integrated community. It's a very arts community. So we literally have built an industry on that because of one co-op that impacted the whole community. So that one co-op then helped create other energies like the
Before you move from Glut,
Sure.
if I could.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know about Glut until 3 months ago.
Uh-huh. Really?
Yeah, when I went in there, I found it a little funky store with every corner crammed with merchandise. And like you said, there's the guy behind the counter. The first time I went in there, looked like a Rastafarian with dreads and playing music. He had everything but the pipe. Okay. But very, very friendly. You can feel the love, and that's where I thought you were going to go. You could feel the love in the place.
It used to be, now of course with all the other co-ops or organic or healthy foods places available, it used to be Glut. People would come from all over to go to Glut because it was a truly authentic, 60s kind of enterprise. I remembered I joked with my friends that, I've got to go to Glut, so I'll see you in about an hour. I only need a few things, but when you go to Glut, you literally have to spend a half an hour socializing and running into people. It was one. At first, it was like, oh man, I can't just go in and go out. And I realized, wait a minute, this is community. When you go into your local eatery, food place with good food, and you're complaining about having to say hello or chat with the people that are part of your community, that's a really good thing, and that creates a sense of community to the point where Glut then attracted a lot of these community-minded people, and that indirectly led to the formation of what is Joe's Movement Emporium. Joe's Movement Emporium, Mount Rainier. It's a performing dance nonprofit. It's not quite a co-op, but it's almost all the principles are really co-op. So Joe's, long story short about Joe's is we part of what my background is, we rented a storefront to help create some art space for local artists who needed just a little bit of work space to do their work outside of their own home. So it was going to be a little arts co-op. So long story short, not only did that happen, but the two dancers came to me and said, hey, we want to make this a dance cooperative or place. Long story short, that started Joe's. That was 20 years ago. Joe's then turned into not one storefront, but 3 storefronts. And then we went around the corner and I became involved in a board member. We bought the biggest blighted building in Mount Rainier. It was an old warehouse that is now, been operating for the past 10 years. 20,000 square feet and 70,000 people a year coming to Joe's, participating in Joe's, and those 70,000 people then go to Glut, then go to Nisi's, a wonderful outside of their own home. So it's going to be a little arts co-op and a couple other places around just one block from Joe's. So all of a sudden now we have more economic activity. We have community-owned businesses, all these things, all because of 2 major influences, which were Glut, the authentic, conventional, straight-up co-op as you can get, and a Joe's Movement Emporium, that required a lot of cooperation from artists and so on, et cetera, to make Joe's happen. And Joe's is now a big, viable asset for the community, not just Mount Rainier, but really the region, because we draw from the region. But Joe's and a Glut have impact beyond that. So because of my involvement with Joe's and realizing that, hey, while I'm doing housing, every community I'm working in, there should be a Joe's. Well, Joe's has become a model for now a couple other organizations we helped put together. The ECAC, Emergence Collaborative Arts Center at off of Euclid Street next to Howard. A similar situation. We took an old abandoned house, a large one, created an art space there. It's now a community space, a real contributor to the community, and that is, again, a nonprofit, but relatively, it's basically a cooperative situation. So the whole point is, it's not a one-off kind of thing. Co-ops really have, if it's done well, and if we really start connecting dots, and moving on in the future, this is a movement that we have to speed up because we have to create stronger communities. That's where the jobs are coming from. That's where the sense of community comes from. That's where we can lower crime and really take care of a lot of social issues if we really literally come together more as a community. So it's just not housing, it's arts, it's civic engagement, it's business, local businesses becoming much more plugged into their community.
Now, is Joe's one block down the street, right in the circle, and across the street from Glut?
So it's Joe's is from. If you walk out Glut, you could literally see Joe's. It's just right off of 34th Street, the main street. But it's literally, you could just look outside and you see Joe's. It's the biggest building in downtown Mount Rainier.
I saw people dancing in there, and I love to dance. Not necessarily that good, but I love to dance. And my sister just told me that they have line dancing classes there.
What I love about Joe's, and see, I grew up, I was a typical, 60s, 70s kids, like, dance, that's just for, I accidentally got involved in what was not only good in terms of the community, but personally, I got plugged into the art scene, and it was just a wonderful realization that, you know what, okay, I'm macho, I did sports, this and that, you'll never see me go to a dance performance. I was amazed that not only all the forms of art, but even more importantly, in Mount Rainier at Joe's Movement Emporium, how many different types of dance and movement and all sorts of things they could fit in that one place, and it works. Even more importantly, our kids, and frankly, and I'll be honest, and this is my community I'm talking about, 20 years ago, we had those 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old kids, 9-year-old kids who you knew were going to go on a certain path. they embraced Joe's. So when Joe's opened, the local kids who were going to be the future runners and, shall we say, entrepreneurs on the streets that don't go to college, they go somewhere else, unfortunately. These were the kids that started embracing, and their lives were transformed. So again, here's a Joe's built on a cooperative basis. No rich guy came up and dumped a whole lot of money on this. It was a real cooperative process, but everyone has benefited, particularly our kids. And, of course, folks that can't find this kind of culture, hand dancing. I didn't know what hand dancing was 15 years ago. And then someone said, hey, we want to do a hand dancing class here on Monday nights at Joe's. And it's a very popular class. And secondly, this is part of our culture, hand dancing. Baltimore, D.C., and Philly, hand dancing is a whole part of our culture that many people have no idea about. And much more.
I grew up in Bluefield, West Virginia, and hand dancing is what we did. Okay. And I thought I was good until I came here. Okay. They put a whole new twist on hand. And I've taken class with a guy named Brad, but I'm going to check out Joe's because I really want to get all of these turns that they have. They do the similar turns in salsa. So I've taken some salsa classes.
You name it. You name it.
But we're going to take our break, and we'll be right back. Please don't touch that dial. Welcome back, everybody. We having a great conversation this morning about co-ops and community and the issues as it relates to growing up in America, whether it's your religion or your gender or your race or whatever it might be, how folks can discriminate and mean and nasty often. And so Stephen Shaff, who's the guest here this morning, we're talking about that. He grew up in Philadelphia. We were talking about dance, which made me ask him where he's from because he looked like a white boy, and white boys can't jump and can't dance.
Hey man, that's the way it is.
Well, I don't buy that anymore.
Well, we could be more mean and more violent than you guys can ever be. Sorry. It's our DNA.
But growing up, he had the same discriminations I had. I had it in Bluefield being black, and he had it in Philadelphia being Jewish. And how people can find that out. They could look at me and tell. Mm-hmm. So that happens. But in co-ops, the main thing I like, I don't know if it was the main thing, but one of the things I liked when I found out about it was that co-ops, their first principle is volunteer and open membership. It doesn't make any difference about any of those things. Mm-hmm. That's when you're using the co-op principles, that's the first principle for a co-op, open and volunteer membership. I don't think in the real world that's always played out, and I've seen some co-ops where it does not, but for most co-ops, that's what is. Mm-hmm. So we were talking about Joe's Movement Emporium in Mount Rainier, and Glut is a couple of food co-ops, and I would encourage you. My sister, who was just telling me, she didn't know the name of Joe's Movement Emporium, but she was saying they had line dancing. So between line dancing and hand dancing and salsa, and I've been wanting to do some African movement dance too. I also have thought about hip hop. Okay, so just to get the body movement.
They got it all.
Yeah,
tap. I mean, it's just really wonderful. So, Werner, we're talking about a number of ways that the co-ops can make a real difference, and obviously we talked about several things. And as Community Vision partners, as the name implies, Community Vision, we're looking to create cooperative relationships in a number of different areas. I'd like to bring up another area that actually we're working on right now that's very cooperative in nature. As a matter of fact, one of your previous guests, Rodney North, and I are working on how to do this. And so you have housing co-ops, you have food co-ops, a lot of things like that. One of the things that we're working on is, all the change agents and folks that are working for the good, nonprofits, so on, et cetera, who, of course, can't get enough done or don't have enough resources. We began to look at that, and after doing this for a number of years, we realized that so many of us out there that are powerful, effective, successful people still can't get what we need to get to make a difference. So we've been talking about an initiative
we're talking about how do we put together a collective of change agents, those of us that are willing to work for a lot less money, but to help change things. There's many of us now out there. There's a whole army, but we are so disconnected. So for the last several years, I've been looking at this and thinking, I keep running into people like me who, if we had the resources, we would help speed up the movements like what MANA started 40 years ago. We would help grow that. We would help, expand successful things that serve the common good more than just the private profit. Not that there's anything wrong with private profit, but there's better ways to do things. So right now, one of Community Vision Partners' initiatives is to put together a co-op of professionals, nonprofit organizations, other groups that can come together and work more collaboratively. For example, I could use, an administrative assistant or a social enterprise person or a marketer, maybe, for 10 hours a week. But I know about 10 other people that could use that. So what if we formed a co-op, help employ one person who could serve several of us, so all those that are doing good work can do much better work. So we're kind of looking at a professional co-op. How do we come together as professionals? And I bet many Rodneys and others who are doing great work, but don't have the luxury of a high-profile consulting firm that could spend money on anything. How do we come together and create the efficiencies of a co-op? So that's another way we're looking at co-ops and how to solve an issue where there's plenty of people wanting to help make change and build out the solutions that are here. But it's environmental, civic rights, a whole bunch of other things. How do we come together and work more efficiently together? That's an initiative we're working on right now. I'm very excited that we're putting some good ideas together, and good people like Rodney and others are helping put this together. So the goal would be that once we come together, then we'd be much more able to leverage and amplify all the good stuff that is beginning to brew, the sharing economy, all these other alternative, what we might call new economy efforts that will help speed up building and redirecting resources and assets to our communities, not offshore bank accounts.
I would really like to work with you on that.
You're on our list.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
You've been recruited.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of, I don't know, Corporate Development Foundation or Cooperative Development Fund, CDF, that co-op. If the folks there might be a part of that, or even maybe providing some funding to get the technology to help put that together. But how to put that together, I think it's great, because that turns out to be one of the problems. Now, I do have to give a shout out to Mikasa.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no,
Okay.
oh man.
We talked about MANA, and MANA's done great, but it's also Mikasa's doing a great job of developing
Latino
housing,
Economic Development Corp, another great organization.
housing counseling services, provided training.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people out there doing a lot of good work. But how we come together, particularly, there's a guy named Jim Johnson with DAWN, DAWN, does training for worker cooperatives. The folks at Democratic Collaborative, they put out a book, Cities Building Wealth.
So I'm glad you brought them up. I came across them a few years ago. When I found it, it's like, how did I not know about these guys before? So here's kind of an issue. They do great work, and they're coming up with all sorts of great solutions and ideas that make a lot of sense. Little argument. It's not radical. The problem, not the problem, but the, how would I say it's not a problem? But I guess the issue is they got this great idea. And I've talked with them, and they love my model, my community development model, and they love it. The problem is, I say, now how do you take your good ideas,
implement,
and do it?
Yeah,
because your great ideas require on the ground, people that know what they're doing. CDCs can do housing, but can they do housing by the thousands? So in other words, how do we take their good ideas and execute? And that's kind of the bridge. We're sort of in one. We do housing, we can do it on scale. We can change communities. We can bring arts into communities, so on, et cetera. So how do you take the Democracy Collaborative? Again, great ideas that are ready to roll and have been happening to a certain extent. How do we do that to transform things, to create jobs in our community, so on, et cetera. That's the trick.
We have David on the line. David, do you have a comment or question?
Oh, yeah, hi. I was going to ask him if he's aware that a lot of the ratings agencies have been bought up by various corporations, and then, of course, they get corrupted once they get bought up. And this has been going on, Reagan's savings and loans days, that was kind of the beginning of it, although during the subprime, they were hard at work, giving high ratings to some of those criminal banks.
Are you talking about rating corporations like Moody's?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And so to this day, that's never really been resolved. And part of the trouble with, Trump and his cronies is based entirely on that they're, how can he move hundreds of millions of dollars so easily, except for through ratings agencies that allow a company to have that kind of transferal. And I was going to suggest if we want to get back to a normal economy, we should set up ratings agencies. And it actually can create millions of jobs because, say, for example, the counterfeit tires. If a bus, an interstate highway bus, has to have tires that are of a certain quality, and these cheap counterfeits come in, and the corporate bus line able to buy hundreds of thousands of counterfeit tires and put the country at risk, you can actually create jobs. Every major city could have some kind of a guy works in he's familiar with the science of tires.
David,
and he can spot a counterfeit,
But David, we got to cut it short because we're getting ready to run out of time. So I got your first one on this creating those. So yeah, and create jobs. Yeah.
Well, it creates the opportunity. I mean, every product, whether it's shoelaces to tires to computer programs, it requires somebody who's got skill enough to spot a counterfeit versus an honest rate.
Okay.
And so you want to create some jobs. Think about it from that angle.
We will. Thank you very much for your call, sir. Thank you.
It's a very complicated answer, but the long and short of it is a lot of stuff gets to happen the way it happens is because those that regulate, say Moody's and whatnot, are appointees from the politicians who are in place because, frankly, they were paid for and bought by large entities that make a lot of money off of their decisions.
We've got to go. I'm sorry, we're out of time.
I need 6 hours to answer this particular question.
Okay,
but a good question anyway.
So, last word?
Last word is everyone needs to come together and create a better way to move forward. The solutions are out there. If we come together, we can start making those solutions happen and not be blocked out by the status quo systems that are not addressing the real issues that we all need to take care of.
And benefit for all of us.
Absolutely.
Everybody out there, please have a great week and live cooperatively. Thank you.
Washington, D.C.'s News Talk, 1450 AM WOL and 95.9 FM.